Hello and welcome to this video in which we're looking at the paperwork that you'll need to do for every formal observation as part of the teacher support program. So to begin, you will need to do a pre-observation meeting a few days before a formal observation where you bring at least an outline or a skeleton lesson plan for your mentor. And there you may agree on some changes or to adapt it somehow, but at least a basic outline of what you will do over the lesson. The more detail you go into in this pre-obs meeting, the better, because it gives the observer a chance to understand not just the content, but also things like the class. It's also important to note that the paperwork is not prescriptive. As teachers, we all know that things in the classroom are very different from what we expect going in. So it's expected that things will have to adapt or change in the moment. So for example, you might plan something around a test, teach, test, and then you'll find from the initial test that either they are already very comfortable with the grammar, and so the teaching aspect is reduced, or that they have more difficulty than you expected, in which case it is extended. The lesson plan is here to show and demonstrate your skill at things like staging and anticipating problems and knowing your class. So the better that you know your class, the better that you know what to expect in the classroom, hopefully the more accurate your lesson plan will prove to be. Okay, so now let's look at how the lesson plan is written. So up at the top here, you'll find just some basic information about the class and the observation. And then we move into a class profile, which gives a brief description of the class. So some things to mention here might be the age range, especially with a young learner class where the age range is naturally limited between 2 and 3 years maybe. The gender splits. So in certain classes, there might be a big imbalance between males and females, which might impact upon the dynamics. The level, according to the Common European Framework. Okay, so this class you can see here is upper intermediate 2, but also we all know that some classes might be stronger or weaker, and some classes have jagged profile. They might be excellent at speaking for accuracy, but the fluency might be reduced. So again, all of these things are worth going into the class profile just to flesh out the class so that the observer knows what your experience of the class is. From a needs analysis that you do in the first lesson, you may also be able to pinpoint some specific interests. And this might be relevant to the content or the context of the class. You might want to talk about their previous English language experience. Are they new to the British Council? Are they existing people who are new to the British Council and might be unfamiliar with our methodology? Common issues are also very important to talk about. What behavioral issues have you noticed in class? What language issues have you noticed in class? And other things that you experience in the class as well, not just the issues, but the positives as well. And some special educational needs if need be. If they are known, then it's worth bringing up. It's also worth mentioning, we rarely pinpoint students by name in the class profile, but keep it kind of vague and general. So you can see my example here. There's the CEF. They're inquisitive. We then move on to the aims for the lesson. These can be taken from the sense of progress, which you will find on the G Drive, which should highlight the aims for the lesson. But you can also see that you can add and adapt these also. The main aim, a grammar point, a language point, a vocabulary, a skill, particularly which skill. And then there might be some other aims, such as 21st century skills, things like collaboration or autonomy, which may be the aim of some lessons also, particularly with young learners. We then move into the timetable fit, why you're giving this content at this point in the course. For example, currently I'm teaching an elementary 2 class, and one of the main aims of the whole course is to master the past simple and the uses of the different auxiliary verbs. Now, this follows on naturally and logically from elementary 1, in which they learn the present simple and the similar auxiliary verbs that are necessary there. So you can draw parallels between courses and between classes as well. What did you do in the previous class that then logically leads to the content of this class? And likewise, what will happen in future classes that depends upon this content now. So if there's a task next lesson that this language will be useful for or likely used, then that's why this is mentioned here. The last part is anticipated problems. Now, there are two that I always use as a standard. One of them is latecomers, which is a common problem in our teaching center here. So again, to bring it up, to highlight it as a problem, and then to suggest a solution. And technology is always mentioned in mine. So what if the IWB doesn't work, the computer doesn't work, or a video that I intend to use doesn't work? And an alternative as well, like to show that you do have a plan B. There are other language problems, such as with the perfect tenses, there is no Arabic equivalent. So they don't have that L1 support. And again, to suggest how I would deal with that situation. Some behavioral problems are here. It's sort of like a personality thing. They're reserved and shy. And there's an environmental problem as well, that the room is quite small for the class. And lastly, in this stage, the materials that you will use in the class. Again, you need to give attribution to the materials, even if they're self-produced. Just say what materials, what sheets you'll use. And it's also worth noting that a copy of these will need to be provided to the observer.